So, hey, second episode here, shooting live at Medicarians. Been a very busy, fun conference so far. Really excited to have our next guest with us. Sarah, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks. My name's Sarah Elmer. I'm a Associate Vice President at Humana, and I work with all of our field distribution. So really all of our big FMO partners. We have about 150,000 contracted agents that distribute our products across the country. And so my team works to support those partners and agents that sell Humana.
I think Sarah is probably one of the most popular, well-known people in the industry. Everybody.
It's a fixture.
Yes, she
I don't
is.
know about that.
She is definitely one of the major fixtures in the industry, and everybody always has great, amazing things to say about you, Sarah. So
Because I buy everybody a drink, so that's why they like me. But no, it's great to be here, and I mean, what a setup you guys have! Perfect location, and everybody coming around and checking out your booth. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. We like to call you one of our GSD people in the business. Like to get shit done.
Yep.
You know, that's what I really, talk about myself too, is it's like, there's so many challenges to our business. And, candidly, there's only a handful of people typically in organizations that can really, move the needle effectively or do change. So we've always very much appreciated, you and your role at Humana, and been very good support for not only us, our beneficiaries, but our agent distribution. Very much value the partnership.
Yeah, no, me too. We met many years ago and under interesting circumstances, to say the least, but definitely saw your vision and how you were going to grow. And it's been awesome just to see the work that Agent Boost has done and how much you've grown to not only help agents, but just consumers, across the country find the right healthcare needs for them.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a journey, right? Especially these last couple of years.
yeah, and we definitely appreciate. We're excited to have you on, Sarah, because and people in your position with the carriers, a lot of times they don't have the what is it? Permission?
Clearance.
Is that the right word? The clearance, the classified knowledge level to be able to speak with, and usually carriers doesn't go so well. So we appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, for sure. We're
Getting the approval.
We're excited to be here, and we'll just edit out anything or. No, I'm joking. But
Let's talk some inside track here on Humana. No.
Inside ball. Let's go. No, but it is true, because it's like a kind of a challenging dynamic with the nature of the podcast that we do, because most corporations, it's the people who are really involved in the decision-making process. They're so restricted in what they're able to say publicly. But then the other people, you don't necessarily care about what they have to say, right? So it's kind of striking that balance.
Yeah.
Can be a challenge just for the nature of our podcast, so to speak.
I agree. And if you've listened to our new CEO, Jim Recton, recently, he's very refreshing in being completely transparent and sharing everything that, he's able to around, Humana's future and what we plan to do. So I think everybody's taken a page out of his book, and, we want to be transparent with how we see things. And, you guys know this because you're great partners of ours, but everything we do starts with a consumer, right? But it's how do we develop great partnerships with folks like you to make sure that we're taking care of those consumers, and everything we do starts with them. And I know that you guys live by that too.
Yep, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit of biz this year. Obviously last year I kept saying it was highly disruptive.
Yep.
In maybe the last 15 years, it was very chaotic, right? A lot of turbulence. The environment has been very challenging. And, like everything, there's always winners and losers in those, challenging times.
Mm-hmm.
This year it seems like a quiet time of the year, but there's never a quiet time. Like behind the scenes, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So kind of give us maybe like an inside track on like what's kind of happening right now from the carrier perspective with CMS, this kind of phase and time of the year.
Yeah, so we're deep into bid season right now, which seems, developing the plans for 26 in March, April doesn't seem, it seems very far ahead, but it's the same timeline we follow every year because obviously things have to be filed and so on. But, we're really taking the approach, this year around what I just said, and that's the consumer first. There's really been an arms race, I think, on benefits, like who can have the best healthy food card, who can have the best dental, right? And it's like an arms race to the bottom.
Yep.
And so you saw some of that disruption this last year, and hey, those aren't really sustainable benefits to have on plans year over year. And so what you'll see from us is, I think you saw this year, and you'll see in the future is, hey, we want to make sure that consumers have stability. What we have heard through every focus group, every time we're talking to a member is, what are you looking for in your products and your benefits? And hands down, it is stability. I don't want to have to go change my plan every year because my dental gets moved or, my healthy food cards, whatever it might be, gets changed. And so we're really looking at 2026 as, obviously we always want to grow. That's the business that we're in. But also, how do we create products that are sustainable and stable for our consumers? So you'll see we go into some new spots, and you'll see we're going to stay strong in spots that we have been, but it's really our mission, I would say, this year is stability and growth. And if you listen to our earnings call, you heard that from our CEO as well. So that's really our focus and our mission for 2026, growth and stability.
I love to hear it. So you don't say, you're going back to, I don't say necessarily Humana, but the industry, I think, is taking a step, I don't want to say backwards, but in the right direction to being health insurance and actually being the core of what it's trying to do. I like you said about this race to the bottom, where it was like we had these years of SSBCI and BVID and this funding environment, like we were just spending like drunken sailors, so to speak, like the industry with all these extra benefits. And it became so messy that half the time consumers weren't even focusing on the core benefit of a functioning plan.
Well, I also think that what's happened too is it's going to give us a chance to go back and have carriers focus on the things that Humana's great at, which is, build out good provider relationships, have good network. Do you function well as an insurer? Do you pay your claims right? Are the doctors happy? Are the customers happy? Instead of, everybody looking for the next best thing, the next best benefit, who can squeak out another $25 on a benefits card or something like that. It will make everybody have to optimize and go back to the things that insurance plans should and have been historically great at.
Yeah, and healthy outcomes, right?
Yep.
I mean, at the core of our business is to have seniors live their best, healthiest life. Like that is not something Humana just says as a tagline. I will tell you, every meeting I'm in with senior leadership down to a customer service associate, we are talking about seniors. How do we help seniors have the best health outcomes for them and meet them where they want to be met, to deliver those needs? And so that's really our focus. We've been great at the customer service stuff. We've won all those awards year after year. Yep. That's something we pride ourselves on, is not just, hey, having the biggest benefit. Or I was talking to somebody yesterday around needs analysis that agents do. And sometimes we've gotten away from, hey, let's sit down with this member and actually see what they need in a health plan. It's not just who has the biggest give back or who has the best this, if that's not a benefit that the consumer needs. And so we're really going to focus our agent training and some of the pieces that we do in 2026 for certification, et cetera, for agents is, let's get back to doing a real needs analysis for the consumer and understanding what they want in their plan. And we'll have a plan that matches those needs. We will in the markets. Good. So let's focus on that.
Good. And I think I like what you said is, obviously this coming year, we're going to see still some growth in certain areas, which is great to hear, because, a lot of, carriers out there, payers, however you want to phrase it, insurance companies, pick your description there. But, they're kind of hunkering down a little bit. So I like to hear about some growth opportunities. And one of the things that I personally have been a little bit saddened by over the last year or two is I found that in a lot of the rural counties, they were the most impacted by some of the funding cuts. And you look at these territories where I would love to see more growth in talking about helping the consumers. It's one of those things that I'm trying to educate regulators on more frequently is when you cut the funding environment, you have those high risk rural areas, FQHC type zones and areas. And it's unfortunate because payers don't really have a mechanism to provide and build quality plans in a lot of those areas. And those end up being a lot of the people that are the most impacted by it. Yeah,
it's really interesting you say that. It's definitely a soft spot in Humana's heart. I don't remember if you, back in the Humana 1 days, our under 65 business, we were actually one of the only carriers to contract with the government in a lot of these rural areas. It's something that, we always try to do is who are the providers there that we can partner with, where create a plan to get consumers in to see care in those areas. A lot of it has to do with who are the providers, who can they go see in those areas. And so our team's always focused on that. One thing I always ask of agents and partners that reside in those areas is they're just as important as in Atlanta, Georgia. We just got to get the relationships there. So if there's relationships with providers or folks in these places, like, let's bubble that up to our team. Our operations teams who create our plans are always seeking out, those relationships to help us provide care in those areas. Cause that's really what it comes down to is can't have a plan there if you don't have providers and somebody to, physically provide the care.
Yep. And I was also going to ask you, so going back to that quality and obviously the member being near and dear and then being the focus, talk to us a little bit if there's the strategy or things happening right now to integrate or more maybe fully leverage or utilize maybe CenterWell and
Yep.
how that factors into doing an actual better job for that member.
Yeah. I mean, there are just so many things that agents can help us with to better take care of members. And also there's all these different partners out there. CenterWell is a great example of just delivering phenomenal care to seniors, especially those with chronic conditions, right? And so the more that we are aligning members with providers that want healthy outcomes, like a CenterWell, and like I said, there's so many other in the industry that do such a great job too. But what we look at is not only, all right, you signed up a member with Humana, great. Are they seeing a provider that has the hearts and badges? You'll know what that is on our website. So are they seeing a provider that does a great job and has good healthy outcomes? Do they have mail order pharmacy? So we know that, through CenterWell or through another, are they getting prescriptions sent to them? We know they don't have to go out and get transportation. So we're constantly looking at, did members go get a physical within 90 days? Are they doing the right things? And as we move into the future, that's something that agents definitely can help us with and, be another asset to not only customers, but also to Humana in a way, is helping us provide that better care by signing them up for CenterWell mail order, going to primary care at CenterWell are both tremendous ways to not only help your clients, but make sure they're getting the care they need.
Yeah, and kind of give me maybe more of an inside view. I always am so curious about, what's really going on with carriers, like behind the scenes of like one of the challenges we've seen in the industry is just there's been a lot more movement in the last few years. Things are disruptive. And
Last year was the most historical movement we've ever seen. 26% of MA changed their plan last year.
Well, and it's a challenge for a carrier, for an insurance company, because you know nothing about that live, right? If I go write an app tomorrow for a 5/1 effective date, Humana knows nothing about that person, right? They don't know anything about, other than, maybe an introductory phone call. You're trying to do some kind of a risk assessment and figure it out, but you really don't start to know about that customer until claims start rolling through. Mm-hmm. And so that's been one of my things about quality over these last couple of years, and all the way up the chain to CMS is even, these insurance companies are at a hard time, and it's not necessarily by their own fault. They don't have the data and the timeline to start understanding that member until they're already like out the door because there's been so much movement. Is that something that is still a challenge from the carrier or the payer perspective? And like, what do you think some of the remedial things are that we can do to fix that?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, if we, wave a magic wand or something, obviously we would want to have every single piece of information about member immediately. Just also think about, I said this earlier, transportation. Like, is it a member that needs help getting places? Is it a member who is food insecure or maybe loneliness? Like, all of those things matter in how we take care of that member. And so, we're definitely, we had a conversation about this the other day, but we are actively looking at all the things that agents and partners can do. So whether that's an HRA, whether that's signing them up with CenterWell Pharmacy, making sure that they're going to Hearts and Badges PCP, all of those things, we're going to look at, hey, how can we integrate the agent more into those processes to make sure that, A, we understand more about the member, but also it's quality. It's quality of business. It's quality that's coming to Humana that we're able to then go take action to help those folks lead healthier lives. And this is Sarah Elmer personal opinion, maybe not Humana opinion here,
This is
but
gonna be good.
I think you're going to see the industry really move that way when it comes to compensation, when it comes to different things is around quality. You're already seeing it with some little things that others are doing. And so I think the more that agents can say, okay, outside of just submitting this application, and I know agents think a lot more about that, but outside of submitting the application, here are the 5 things that I can do that is going to help Humana take care of this member, but also help the member, right? So it's helping us help them. And I think that's really going to be a big focus as we, move on the road to your point. So we don't have the types of disruption that we've had. It was a disruptive year, not only, across the industry, a lot of switching, a lot of, plans that, again, arms race kind of, didn't make it in the market. And so sustainability, quality, making sure the consumer comes first, those are all things that are top of mind for us right now.
Yeah, to that point, I was just going to ask you guys, like a lot of carriers, there was a lot of disruption. Unfortunately had to exit some markets last year. Dan and I have talked a lot, and we think you guys did a really good job kind of threading the needle, so to say, of, doing a good job of where you had to exit some unhealthy, business and then also add in areas where it makes a lot of sense. Do you think that we're, as an industry, not necessarily just Humana, that we're going to see more of that this year going into AEP, or do you think we've kind of seen the worst of it as far as like stabilization and...
I think you're going to see the markets, I think there's going to be...
Or we'll see after next week.
Yeah, we'll see after next week. We'll see in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
No, I think there's going to continue to be some bumps in the road just as the industry starts to, I don't want to say level out, but starts to go down that path of sustainability. So I wouldn't be surprised. And again, we haven't even gone down that far of the road of Humana. So I couldn't even tell you, anything that we're going to do. But just as like a gut check in the industry, it does feel like, 26, there's still surely going to be some of the same that we saw this year. But I think, even talking to the other carriers that are here, we see each other around and, nobody's ever giving trade secrets, but, just state of the industry.
Reading the room.
Yeah.
Well, we're all in this together,
exactly. And I think you'll hear that from everybody that, there's just a lot going on, but ultimately it does feel like most want to get back to just being really, really stable. And at the end of the day, they're competitors of ours, of course, but, I truly believe all those carriers really want the right thing for seniors too.
Right.
And you feel that, you see it when you're talking to those other carrier partners of that are out there, and
half of them have worked at Humana from one time or another anyway, right? I mean, it's like it's incestuous business, and they just change their hats.
Yeah, it's. I was telling somebody the other day, I think there's probably 50 people that work at Humana that used to work at United, probably 50 at United that were at Humana. It's a big business here. You see it in this room right now.
Yes.
Right. It's a big business that's actually really,
You're
really
like, let me
small.
look at your badge. Where are you at now?
Yeah, exactly. It's like stalking going on here because everybody knows everybody. But it is. I love being at these because kind of that. You kind of get a feel for how other people are thinking about the year coming up. You have it in your own mind. It kind of gets validated talking to all the folks that are here. But then also it just does remind me that really everybody is in this business for the right thing, right? And that's how do we help as many people as possible, and whether they go on a Humana plan or somebody else, at the end of the day, we truly want that person just to be making the best decision for them.
Yeah, and I appreciate going back to something you said maybe a little bit earlier about, quality and some of the things that brokers can do to really help, not only that consumer, but the carrier as well, and be involved. I like to hear that because it sounds like there's some job security, which at least for me and a lot of the brokers did not feel a lot of job security over the last year or two, right? It was a little chaotic, but it's always great to hear that, I think the role and the mode, I think everybody's open to say, hey, there's things that are not working right now
Yep.
as far as from a compensation perspective or certain things that are, sure, let's re-examine them. But I think that the tone has been a little bit better this year, saying I think we've gotten through a lot of that and arrived at the point that there's job stability and that AI is not just going to completely replace brokers.
No, yeah.
There's a lot that we still need to do, but how we do it and how we're compensated and what we do might look a little differently moving forward. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. And I mean, you were at our partner summit last year where we roll out our plans, and our new CEO was there. And I think the first thing he said is, week one on the job, I realized how important these partner relationships are. I mean, the amount of business and the quality of business that comes into our organization from partners like you and others is the majority of the business that's written, right? And so, in particular, field agents do a really good job with accretion and retention.
Shout out field agents.
Yeah, shout out always to field agents and call center agents too. I mean, all those things you were talking about, like setting up a primary care, doing mail order, all those things, like when you're actually on the phone with the agent, like they're so good at that because they're on the phone, they're not letting them go, they're doing all those quality checks or have the ability to. And so there's just so much that partners and agents bring to our organization that it's funny you say that, because I never thought ever that there was any instability, and but there was that. Like, I mean, people felt that in the industry the last couple of years, just with CMS final rule and all those different things created that. But we've always believed there's absolutely a place for brokers and partners in this business. And, you know, it's my team that supports those brokers and partners. So I'm going to be a little selfish here. And, you know, I think we do it the best, quite candidly. But there is nothing more important to us when it comes to brokers and partners than how you feel supported and trained.
Yeah, well, and I feel like we're kind of in the room a lot of the times where we're having those discussions, and we've always understood kind of the role in broker distribution, you know, kind of. But I don't think that, you know, industry-wide, that sentiment was necessarily cascaded all the way down to the brokers. You know, and it's a shame, because I talked to field agents and agency owners and people like that, and were like getting out of the business, and it was just, they felt like that friction and they were getting out. But to your point, I think Humana's always done a great job in communicating strategy, in reinforcing the relationship, the value, and how distribution works. And they've always done an excellent job with that. It just doesn't always make its way down to every single agent.
Well, if I had to kind of sum up, this is why people like this podcast, is for this exact reason. Dan said, we're in the room with, you know, carrier partners, and we're also in the room with agents. Yeah. And as I've talked to a lot of the agents that have been here walking around, their big concern, honestly, was plans going non-commissioning. And that was kind of surprising to me. But if you look at some of these agents across the country, that's probably been the most major threat, the most significant threat to some of them. And, you know, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, Humana wasn't.
We didn't do any of that this year.
Didn't do any of it. And, you know, I tend to think that CMS is going to probably step in and have some rules on language and protections prior to plan year. But if you had to look in your crystal ball, do you think that's going to continue to be a trend, or do you think that'll kind of course correct?
Yeah, it's very interesting. This is what I'll say. I can't speak for the other carriers who made those tough decisions, and undoubtedly they were tough decisions for them to make. Sure. Is that all the hard work we need to do when it comes to, you know, stability in the marketplace, we do this time of year in biz. And there's hard decisions that have to be made. I would say I'm very proud of the work that, you know, my peers in the operations teams did last year through that bid work, and said, you know, these are the decisions we need to make to make sure we're still delivering a quality product in the market, and there to be commissions on plans. And so, you know, a lot of hard work goes into making sure there's a tight room there, right? Like this industry is run on a very small margin
and timeline, right?
And timeline.
We'd lamented last year that Humana kind of like waited, felt like the Braveheart, where they wait till the very last minute to raise the spikes to kind of say what you were going to do. But to kudos to you all, you did a good job of holding to what you'd said and not having to make further disruptive changes. And you guys, really did it the right way.
Yeah, we never want to be disruptive during the selling season, if at all possible. Again, those are very hard decisions I'm sure others had to make, but it's we work very hard on the front end. And, last year, we were going to roll out our products this date, and they got moved back a little bit. We got some different information back from CMS about some things.
Stuff.
Yeah.
We needed to adjust, right? And so it's like, hey, we didn't want to put something out there, right? We didn't want to put something out there that was not actually going to be the plan agents are going to sell.
Just kidding.
Because it's so confusing, right? And we've seen that happen before.
Yep.
And so for us and we heard it, right? Like all the broker managers who roll up in our organization, they had all these rollout meetings scheduled. They had to cancel and do all this stuff. But for us, it was like, hey, let's be prideful in the information we're putting out into the market and into the industry. And if we don't know if it's completely accurate this minute, why are we putting it out there? Like, and so you'll see us continue to do that if we need to. Like, I don't plan on that right now. Our first look is scheduled to be released.
I have a date in my calendar.
Yeah, don't say it. I don't think I'm supposed to give it away.
I know. I have a date in my calendar.
I was like, getting ready.
Hopefully, there's no changes to that. But I'll tell you right now, if we need to make a change, we will. If it means we're not, we're kind of giving out half information. It's not a way to do business.
Yep, completely agree. And to that point, this is a Dan thing. This is not an official Sarah Elmer position. I think, again, this year we are going to see carriers only have so many levers they can pull, right? I mean, the way things are structured from CMS, there's only so many kind of tools that they can use, especially when you start looking at TBC and NABA and all these very complicated concepts of building your plan. So then when you kind of go a little sideways on economics, or a carrier or a payer in general, you have very limited choices as to what you can do. So I would say, this is me, I think this year coming AEP, we're going to see more non-commissionable plans from some payers or carriers, just because it's a tool that they have to use. And until it gets taken away or kind of regulated out, that's still kind of a page in their playbook. So I think we're going to see more of that from some carriers. And then I also think that there's a lot of smaller regional plans, smaller kind of health or hospital system-based plans out there that have just kind of made their way through the MA space for a number of years. But now that it's more challenging economically, they kind of hung around for a year or two, but like every year it gets more and more challenging. And I think we're going to see more of them kind of bowing out a little bit. That's me.
I agree. I just met 2 new carriers today that were like getting, and I was like, good luck with that.
There's some really great regional MA carriers, but I think you're right. Like, it just depends on how they've had. I actually live in a market where we have a really great regional one, but you're right. There's been some that have just hasn't worked out, right? And so, one of the great things about working for a company like Humana is, we want to be everywhere we can be. That's definitely our goal, is to be as in many markets as possible, for sure.
Well, and that's the thing. You guys do MA. Like, that's what
we do.
And so I keep telling people, like, look, I know that sometimes, like, investor calls and other things like that, there's, hey, that's what you do. But at the same time, the environment right now in the industry, to my point earlier, when you're like a local or regional carrier and Medicare is 5 or 10 or 20% of your revenue, it's not your core and it's not your focus and it's not what you do well. You're really making your revenue off of like your government contract or a large group or whatever. It's just, we see these organizations that are just not efficient enough to kind of thrive in this environment. So that's kind of back to why I think we're going to see more of those type of disruptive exits this year.
Yeah, and Dan mentioned something that I wanted to, shout Humana out on, is really the leadership and the steady hand, kind of, because last year around this time, everybody started figuring out MLRs were really upside down, and Humana took a big hit to the stock price, and, could have definitely freaked out, and leadership could have, made a lot of drastic decisions to try to chase dollars and things like that. But there was long-term, steady-handed decisions that were made with leadership, and I think you guys have handled it really, really well, and that's one of the reasons why we really appreciate you guys and love working with you as partners.
Yeah, I agree, and it's interesting. I really appreciate you saying that, because honestly, every company and every industry goes through ebbs and flows, right? It's a natural part of being in business. And, when there's been challenging times at Humana, and this is not fluff, this is real. The conversation goes to, everything we do, if we put the consumer first, we're going to get out of it on the bright side, right? If that's our main focus, if it's not chasing a dollar, if it's how do we have healthy outcomes and how do we support members first? Let's think about that. If we were in their shoes, what would we want to happen? If it was your dad, your mom, right? How would you want that to happen? The rest will come. That is honestly how our leadership thinks, and it's just really refreshing. You know, I've been at Humana for 18, 19 years now, and there's a lot of tenure at Humana, and the reason for that tenure is because of that, is because of the way, you know, you're prideful in what you do because you are making decisions that you feel like are in the best interests of our customers.
Yep. I was going to say, I'll keep the adages about the old guard and the new guard out of it that I have with Humana there. But I was going to say, so in Sarah Elmer's wish list of things that for you would really like to see this next year, and then also any predictions you'd like to throw out there at all.
Okay. Packers are going to win the Super Bowl. That is my prediction.
Oh,
Jeff is going to love that. Where's Jeff?
my
Yeah,
God.
that.
He's got his Packers helmet in his office and all his stuff. And
I wouldn't hate that.
Industry prediction is that in-home appointments, not from Humana, so don't get excited, but in-home appointments are coming back.
Okay.
I think it's going to be the biggest.
No more return to Mecca agents, huh?
That's awesome. I love that you just said that. There's probably like 10 people at Humana that would even know what that means in this world, and I'm one of them, so I love that.
Well, because in the early days of our business, it caused us a lot of consternation.
I hear you. I think in-home appointments, guys, I think they're going to be what field agents are using to get in front of and meet consumers. So I bet you next time when we're here, you know, we'll see if that's right. But I definitely think those puppies are going to be hard to come by and very valuable. So I definitely think that has. And your second question was as an employee.
any like your wish list of anything that you would like to see this next year, whether it be from CMS, whether it be from Humana, what's on your wish list this year?
Yeah, I'm a salesperson, right? And so I always know that if Humana's in the game, that we're going to have a tremendous year. And I feel like I know that our operations partner and our team is going to put us in a successful position. So that makes me very excited. And you know, I think we are on the path right now to do some really cool stuff with technology. So there's going to be a little bit more to come with that, but enrollment.
Interesting teaser. Interesting teaser.
AI. We have a new platform coming out for agents that is really going to be, doesn't matter if you're a call center, if you're field, anybody who has a contract with us. We have some really new cool communication tools coming out that are AI driven. And so you could type in a search bar like, tell me the election codes in Utah. And a Utah one-pager will come up and say, you know, here are the election codes or here are the markets that we have a plan in. And so we're really trying to do some neat stuff with technology. And so
is it called Sarah, the AI tool?
It is, yes.
Is it? Yeah.
Yes, and I'm actually
Grok has
behind my phone doing it. No. So I think you'll see technology continues to be something that we look to evolve and help us get better in the way we communicate, not only with members, but with our agents, with our partners. So I hope all of that gets to the finish line, very confident that it will. But I think technology is going to continue to transform the way that we do business.
That's cool. It probably takes some pressure and support off like the agent support unit and things like that, and be able to reallocate some of those efficiencies there.
They should be happy.
Yes.
You know? No, I was just going to say though that's I like to hear that as well. I keep telling agents, if you're a crappy agent and you're doing a crappy job, you're going to get obsolete. But you know, obviously everyone's AI is like the big buzz these days, and I keep telling them, no, if you use it the right way and you leverage it, you're just going to become more powerful and more efficient and better at what we do. So, you know, make sure that you're being a good agent, you're using the tools, you're leveraging them to be that better agent for the consumer. Yep. And as long as you're doing that, you're going to be just fine.
Yeah, like all the tools that we're going to introduce over the next, let's call it 6 to 18 months, are all around helping agents be more efficient with their business, whether that's book of business tracking, or communication, how to communicate with Humana, self-service tools. All of that is around that. We don't think that technology is ever going to, at least not in the time that I'm going to be working, is ever going to replace an agent. Like, we do not believe that, right now.
Lots of us will be in trouble.
Exactly.
Well, and one thing while we're on the topic and talking about technology too, before I forget, the one thing that I will tell you too is I think you all have been doing a very good job with your Ignite, like in those newsletters and the blasts. And I can't tell you how often people ask me questions and I'm like, look, I haven't been in the Reeves for a number of years, but they have great stuff in Ignite. And I sit there and complain like one of those old school boomer agents. And I'm like, back in my day, I had to look everything up in a book and search around. And it's like, you guys are so spoiled because you do a great job.
You get spoon-fed. Yeah.
All these resources, like every week on Ignite, like great resources, great technology, and even in Vantage, which I really like. It's just over the last couple of years, seeing like the enhancements and how easy it is to be an agent or an agency owner. That is the one thing I also want to give Humana big props on, is you've made so many enhancements that running a business has never been easier than it is today. And I love what you guys do with your tech.
Yep, just wait. It's going to get better. So there's some exciting stuff in there for agency partners coming around, helping you better manage your book of business. So those are my predictions. Packers are going to win the Super Bowl.
That's bold. That's more bold.
In-home appointments are going to be back better than ever. And technology, Humana is going to have some really cool technology that helps agents better do their business. And that's
good. So all those young agents out there looking to get in the business, get used to windshield time.
It's amazing, Dan. It is amazing how many young agents we contract every single day.
We see it.
Yes, it's amazing.
Absolutely, right?
It's great.
We see it on our side too, and we love it. And I'm always giving them the advice of like, hey, this is like a business where because they want to really make money getting into the business. And I tell them like, look, if you want to make money, be really good at your job and really love your people and care about them and focus on them. Do a great job of a needs analysis. And if you are a really good agent and you're a really good asset and resource to your members, the money's going to come. Focus on being a good agent.
Yep. Right. Yeah. It was funny. Our leader, Tracy Nolan, she had never worked in healthcare, came over from the cellular industry and from T-Mobile. Yep. And one of the things, it was interesting. Like one of my first meetings with her was just telling her how our product is distributed, which is really actually very similar to how cell phone industry is set up, like amazingly so. But, she's always talking about that, like just around if the agent just does the right thing, right? If the agent just does the right thing, looks at the tools, is compliant, like you're going to be somebody we want to support, we want to work with, and you're going to have a great career. And she's like, that's how it was in cellular. That's how it is in insurance. It's not, rocket science, so to speak, but you do all those things correctly, you're going to have a great future and a great outcome. And this is a great business to be in, right? Like as an independent agent or as a call center agent, whatever, like you're waking up every day helping people not only find healthcare, but, consumers want to talk to agents because it's also a financial decision, right?
Health and wealth.
It's health and it's wellness and it's all of that combined.
Yep. And I was going to say, so before we kind of wrap, I want to talk about Humana calls it Roy.
Yep.
Right. Rest of the year. They're the, some carriers call it lock in, but Roy at Humana.
Roy at Humana.
Yeah. No one's been very locked in for the past few years.
Nobody's been locked in. I like that. Yeah.
Guardrails are off.
Yeah.
No, but it's been, we kind of break up the business like we do at Agent Boost of saying like we have AEP, we have our OEP, and we have our rest of year lock-in, right? And we kind of segment it out into those chunks.
Yep.
And so we're kind of, right now, it's April 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one's even played any pranks on us.
I know. It's kind of been a blur since we've been here. But it's now rest of year.
Yep.
And so Humana's been having, obviously, a great year.
Yes.
You guys have been crushing it from like a sales performance perspective.
Yep.
You're way ahead of, when the team drew it up last year, where you'd be. I think you're way ahead of goal. And, what do you expect throughout Roy this year? Is that trend going to continue throughout the rest of Roy?
Yeah, I absolutely believe it is. There's a lot of markets that have the integrated D-SNP now, which is, I think, going to sell a lot. 3 times the amount of C-SNP plans in business in 25 AEP, then 24. Just industry, that's an industry number.
Yep.
And then so many agent opportunities. And so we feel really good about all of those segments that we'll be able to capitalize on. It is interesting, right? Because there is only so many things you can write business on this time of year. But
Yep.
our message has been, hey, if you have a consumer that wants a plan, we have one in the market for them. We think there'll be a lot of D-SNP, a lot of C-SNP, a lot of agent business across the markets. And Roy, we are also, you'll see from us actually, I think coming on Ignite next week is like, just get in front of folks. Go to a supermarket or not a supermarket, a fair.
Yeah.
Why can't I think of the name
Health
of
fair.
Health fair.
Whatever.
Yeah, like get out in the market, right? And we just have seen so much success with agents who go to a food bank or just go where seniors are, meet people, and like what that brings you, not only with like this time of year, meet your friends, like just be in your community, and what that does for agents. Like if you look at some of our largest sellers this time of year, it's really people who are ingrained in the marketplace. It really is.
It's interesting you say that because I've always told these agents, you're talking about young people getting in and how many young people, and that was me many, many moons ago, a young kid getting into business. And I tell them, I said, my marketing plan was really easy back in the day. I studied and observed what seniors did throughout their day. What does their day look like? Where are they going? Are they going?
They're walking at the mall. Guess where? Guess
mall walkers, the golf course. What are they doing? And whatever it is that they're doing, that's where you are.
Yeah.
It's a pretty easy marketing plan. And
So now they're at the pickleball courts.
Exactly.
Hey, whatever that looks like. I think you guys are a big pickleball sponsor, actually. No, it's very true, though.
For sure. Yeah.
So,
I mean, we say it all the time, like be in the community, be known as the insurance, you said it, health, wellness, financial expert. Be known as that person, where you live or at your office, wherever it might be, and you're gonna be fine. And there's plenty of seniors to help every single day, whether that's an AEP, OEP, or Roy 8, as we call it now. So,
right. Well, and one thing
Roy
too,
8, huh?
Roy 8.
I want to touch on before I keep saying it before we wrap because I feel like I could talk forever. But talking about like important work that we do, at least for brokers and agents who are listening to the podcast, even regulators. But I think one of the big themes has been, hey, find the right plan for the consumer. So sometimes they're on a Medicare Advantage plan, but they're really more suitable for a D-SNP plan that's fully aligned. We're going through that education phase right now with brokers about MCO alignment and eligibility for enrollment. I think there's a big curve about the next 90 to 120
100%.
days for brokers, but like become very knowledgeable and valuable and be a resource and help the qualifying members get on those D-SNP plans, because those plans, not just because they're better funded, but because they're really built to do a better job with that member. And same with chronic plans. So I keep telling brokers, like, as you're going through like a good needs analysis, getting to know your clients and your members and prospects, do what you can. If they qualify for a chronic plan, get them on a chronic plan. If they qualify on a D-SNP plan, get them on a D-SNP plan. And I think by getting them on the appropriate plan, that's going to be a big lift in quality, and I think a big initiative for most carriers over these coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have, starting next week, some of the D-SNP markets are different, like how you can enroll somebody when there's integrated plans. And so we actually have, next week, we're starting some webinar series really to do training state by state in what that looks like. Because we also believe, like, we want agents to be educated to be able to make the right decisions, because obviously we don't want them putting somebody in a wrong plan or anything like that. So on Ignite, ignitewithhumana.com, we'll have all those webinars and trainings, but super important to understand how that works. And we're going to do a bunch of D-SNP boot camps.
Good.
You've probably heard of those before that we do, but we're going to do a bunch of those too, just because it is confusing. It's not the same, game that it has been before. And so you're right. Educating yourself and making sure you understand how those plans work is super important. And, we'll be on the front end of education with that. So definitely if you're an agent out there listening and
Yep.
you want help, need assistance, come knocking on our door, because we're going to be more than happy to help you here.
Yeah, and your training's always been best in class. So Humana's
appreciate
training's always been amazing.
Yeah, and we need to kind of collaborate on that as basically distributors, agents, carriers on, having, what we don't want is to have our, accretion rates like creep up there, because, agents don't know how to write those MCO, like those aligned plans very well. And so you see a lot of rejected applications. that quality, that friction, I mean, that's what we all want to avoid, because
Yes.
there's going to be a learning curve, I think, over the next 90 days. So if CMS ever listens to this, it's like, hey, expect that. You know, there's going to be like a little bit of a leveling out phase, I think, for a couple months there.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Agreed.
it's good. Hey, okay, before we any last thoughts before we kind of go from either one of you?
I think my last thought would be thanks for having me. Really appreciate you guys, the partnership, and this is a great business to be in.
It is.
And we do a lot of really good things. We help a lot of people, and you know, there's not a lot of businesses that you can be in where you help people and you make money,
Yep.
right?
Sure.
And so you do two things that are really exciting. You make money and you help people. And so I would just say, if you're in this business or thinking about getting in it and you're waffling, you're not sure, if you ever need help with training or a pep talk, whatever it might be, like, we have some really great people across the country. We have broker managers in every single market. Like, connect with
We'll
us,
give them
right?
Sarah's cell phone
Yeah,
number.
Give them my number. Give them my number. I'm here to talk. But no, I
Give them a pep talk.
just am excited for the future, honestly. I think you kind of hit a spot on. There's kind of like this dullness last year, maybe, or there wasn't the energy that I think that had been in our industry for a while.
Like looming, like doom and gloom a little
exactly.
bit, right?
And now I feel like everybody's got the pep and the step back, right? Everybody feels good about the direction. Obviously, there's always going to be changes. There's always going to be things that happen, but we do a lot of really good work. So I'm just excited to see where the future goes, because I do feel tremendously hopeful about not only Humana's future, but just the industry in general.
Very good.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you so much. We could keep going, but we probably got to wrap it. Thanks for being so generous
But
with
hey,
your time, Sarah.
Maybe we'll get around to it at some point.
Maybe.
Absolutely.
Again, thank you for your time, Sarah.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.